Greetings and salutations, Cleveland, Ohio, and the rest of the planet. Welcome to another edition of 360 Info Network. Today, we're going to have a very interesting show. Art is the topic of discussion today, and to do that, we have a number of artists with us. We're going to talk about art, the importance of investing in art, and something else we're going to talk about is something that has been quite controversial for the past couple of weeks, and that is the Super Bowl halftime show. But before we get to that, I just have to make this quick announcement. I'm going to be doing a performance at the East Cleveland Public Library today at 3. It's called Looking Back, Moving Forward. It is basically music, images, and words. So I'm going to show the Winston Willis film for those who have not had an opportunity to see that. I've also prepared a slide presentation that is a tribute to Dr. Runoko Rashidi. I'm going to be doing some new poetry, some stuff that nobody has heard yet. And I'm also going to be doing some new music that I have performed in terms of songs. So come through today. It is a Black History Month program, and it will definitely give you a look back and it will also give you a look into the future. Also, I want to let you know that we're going to be doing another program at Larchmere Arts next month on the 15th of March. We're bringing in Deanna Thompson, who's going to feature her photographs of poets. And we will also be looking to have some of the poets who are pictured to be a part of this program as well. So there will be performances, there will be photography, and we're going to feature this new artist. Also, there's going to be a music event at Larchmere Arts at the end of the month, assisted by the name of Gloria Cummings Jones. It's going to be bringing in Ed Ridley and some others, and they are going to be performing jazz at Larchmere Arts. So we're going to do that this month. We're going to do it next month, and we're going to open things up at Larchmere Arts. So stay tuned. Go to the Facebook page, look at the events tab, and you will see all the things that will be happening at Larchmere Arts in the very near future. So with all that said, oh, and I also want to mention that our brother Antonio, he is not with us today. He may be joining us, but he is getting a well-deserved vacation. So hopefully he'll join us. But if he doesn't, we definitely understand. So with all of that said, let's get to the business at hand, and I will welcome my guests to 360 Info Network. We have Mr. Elijah Gilmore, also known for his association with an entity called Tribe of Eli. He is a music educator, he is a percussionist. We were just talking a few moments before the show, and he let us know that he toured with Gladys Knight for over 5 years. So he is a seasoned pro when it comes to music, and he's very passionate about the healing power of music. Also, no strangers to 360 Info Network. We have Mr. Rodney Carpenter and Ms. Bonnie Venable. They are R&B 216 Studio. They were in Larchmere Arts for well over a month with their fantastic and magnificent art. And that is the center of our conversation today, art. Now, I teased the show a little bit online, and I told folks that we were going to talk about the Super Bowl. So I want to talk about the Super Bowl, but before we get into that intense conversation about what people saw last Sunday when Kendrick Lamar took the stage and basically gave the world a statement that many cannot ignore and many can't understand, we're going to talk about that. But before we do, let's talk about art. Bonnie, you were the inspiration to do this show because we had a conversation a few weeks ago where you impressed upon me how important it is not only for people to appreciate art, but to also buy art. I went to Mary Weems's house last week for a meeting. I walked into her house and I saw all that magnificent art up on her walls. And it's very clear to me that she is a collector and she is an investor and she gets it. What do you think motivated Mary Weems? And I know you can't speak for her, but what do you think motivated her to start collecting art? And why do you think it's important for her to do that?
I think she thinks of things from her own perspective, and collecting art by artists that you actually know, there's more of a connection. There's a deeper relationship I think you have to the art. So I think that her in-depth understanding of feelings and ideas and so on, which she expresses through her poetry, is an expansion when she purchases art from, local artists and people that she actually knows and that she connects with. So I think it's a personal connection that she has with the artist, with the art, and it is a way of her that she has of expressing her own feelings and interaction with the world.
Hmm.
That's
Rodney,
my
you
guess.
have any thoughts about why someone might want to collect art, and why it is important for them to not only collect it but look at it as something that can be invested in?
I think Bonnie touched on it. That personal connection, something that reflects how you feel, and it's cool to get an artist that you relate to, and you actually want to share the story about the artist with people about when you buy the work and put it in your house. You know, you met so and so, and his work is this, and what the story is art tells. You know, so it's that personal connection.
All right. We are being joined by Simi Davis. We'll bring her in just a little bit later. Simi, welcome to 360 Info Network, and we're happy to hear your contributions to our conversation today. All right, Elijah, I know you're not a visual artist, but I know that you understand and recognize the importance of art. What are your thoughts? Elijah?
Can't hear.
Okay, looks like he might be muted. Elijah, I
What about
believe
now?
you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we hear you now.
Okay. Art is very important. A
Okay.
lot of times when we think about art, we think of art in terms of, especially in the music, we think entertainment, we think self-expression, and
Mm-hmm.
and 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 I think we don't realize that art can be used in different ways. Like art can be used in therapy, for instance. And I heard you say, you can invest in art from a financial standpoint. So, yeah, I think uh, taking it back to the using art as therapy, I think people would be surprised on how just listening to the right music could relax you if you were having anxiety, or if you were kind of sluggish. Listening to the right music could get you inspired and motivate you to, get your day started. Um, and this is why also you see the hospitals using music. This is why you see music used in like a church, for example. So I think music is more than entertainment. I think the arts in general. Uh, I think people should start viewing the other ways that we can use art to benefit our lives.
Yes. And so you have a platform called Tribe of Eli, and I know you're involved in music education. We had a conversation about emotional intelligence. Can you talk about how emotional intelligence ties into having art as a benefit to folks?
Okay. So yeah, the Tribe of Eli wellness program was developed to teach emotional intelligence to our community by way of the art. One thing we realize is that with music, this is another benefit of music when it comes to education. Music allows us to learn things easier and to also retain it. That's why we use music in education as well as the other arts for that reason. So the reason we've been teaching our community emotional intelligence is because emotional intelligence allows us to be self-aware of ourselves, our emotions, how we feel, why we feel those emotions, and the healthy way to manage or cope with those emotions. Emotional intelligence also allows us to be aware of our environment and other people's emotions and why they may feel the way they feel, and healthy ways to cope, manage, and come to peaceful, productive resolve.
Mhm. Can you talk about some of the successes that you've seen with students that you work with using music as therapy?
Yes, a lot of our students who are introduced to emotional intelligence usually are able to better manage their emotions and handle things in healthier ways, whereas before they might have had a meltdown, or maybe would have reacted to a situation with a lot of aggression, but now they're able to take a pause, breathe, think, and then decide what is the healthiest action I can take that's going to give me the greatest return with the least amount of liabilities. Also, we've seen with our kids that from that, they're having better relationships with their peers and their teachers, as well as their grades also go up as well.
Yes. Okay. So, Rodney and Bonnie, you also work directly with the community. I know, Rodney, you talked about doing paint and sips. Everyday people come in, you put a canvas in front of them, they get some paint, they put it on the paper, and magic happens. Can you talk about the value of everyday people being involved in the creation of art?
I think one thing, whenever you meet somebody, they always talk about I used to love art, So when you put that stuff out in front of them and they get to explore their own signature and how they create, because everybody creates a little different. It's usually very, very interesting to every person individually, and it's great, and as Eli was saying, the therapy thing is good too, because me and Bonnie actually teach youth also, and I work with recovering addicts. I teach them twice a week, and they love to do the art, to express and share. Sometimes we do collages just about their life. It's all about kind of what Elijah said, because they're going through therapy and they actually learning to do all the things he was saying to start making better decisions, start actually thinking about why you're doing what you're doing. And it's great, I guess Bonnie could share some of the things too. Where she worked with some youth this summer. I guess that was interesting, wasn't it, Bonnie?
Oh, that was great. Yeah, the kids they were so proud of their accomplishments, and it was really an expression of who they were. In fact, it was like self-portraits that they did, plus other things. So yeah, they get a
Okay.
lot out of it. Yeah.
Gonna bring Simi into the conversation. Simi is she's an administrator, she's an artist, she's a singer, she does a lot of different things, and I know this is a subject that is near and dear to her heart. Simi, from your perspective, what is the value of collecting, owning, and investing in art?
Having art is the last thing that we have been encouraged to do, and it's the one thing that we do on our own. Nobody has to tell us how important art is. It is a very personal thing, and then it's also universal. Um, the ownership of art is taking it to the next dimension, being able to participate, being able to also be the observer of the thing that you create, or being the observer of art that somebody else creates, and then having a full body, full mind, full spirit experience. There's only one thing that can do that, and that's art.
Right.
So it's important to own your own, because it helps you see who you are and keep that in front of you at all times, reminding you that you're not just your title, you're not just your clothes, you're not just your name, you're everything, and you're one with everything.
Hey, Vince,
Yes.
I never really answered your question. I just realized it just now. Uh,
Okay.
but as it relates to collecting art, I don't know if a lot of people know this, but like our dollar is constantly losing value, but art appreciates. So if you have a really good piece of art that you might like, uh, that's something that can be passed down through, your family as an inheritance. And so I think that's a benefit of from an investment side, though you may not want to sell it, but I don't think a lot of people know that art usually appreciates versus a car, again, depreciates in value, but art appreciates. And so that's a beautiful thing about it from an economical standpoint.
Yeah. And I'll add to that conversation that you can actually buy stock that invests in art. That's one of the ways that you can generate passive income just by owning a piece of stock. So you hit the nail on the head when you talked about how the dollar is losing value. So when you make an investment, you want to put your money into something that it's going to increase in value versus something that is going to decrease in value. So if you got a bunch of cash sitting in a savings account somewhere, it's literally disappearing. It's evaporating, and at a certain point it's not going to be worth anything, which brings me to just drop this into the conversation, and that is the digital world. We're moving towards a blockchain based economy, and part of that infrastructure is something called non-fungible tokens, or NFTs, and many folks in the artist community are beginning to put their intellectual property into the form of NFTs, which allows other people to invest in their art and get them paid for their art. So we don't have a whole lot of bandwidth about that right now, but as we move towards this blockchain based world, there will be artists who do get it, who do understand it, and they are going to be maximizing the effect and the impact of their art through a digital means. So I just wanted to put that out there, and also just talk about the importance of the momentum that art is taking in our community. I've been serving on something called the Transformative Art Fund Committee. We were responsible for approving 7 projects that number in terms of grant size from $250,000 to almost $500,000 for each of these projects. It is going to involve, or it is involving actually, over 200 artists that are empowered to create things that will have value and impact on the city of Cleveland. And I think what has happened is the leadership structure in this city has recognized how art contributes to the economy. Back in 2022, and this is on the heels of the pandemic, art and culture generated over $500 million to the economy of this region. So there's no question that art really has an impact, and there are dollars and cents involved in art. So it would behoove us to become more aware of how art benefits us, and also how art can be something that you can use to generate transformative wealth, intergenerational wealth. You can pass something down to your children, and they can do the same thing, and it will make our world a better place. So we
Just
talked a
to,
little bit about art. Bonnie, did you want to add something?
yeah, I just wanted to mention that all of the art that is in Europe, and Spain, not Spain, but well, Spain too, but France and Italy and so on, that at one time was an investment in the government. The Mona Lisa and the many statues that were created at that time was a government investment, or an investment by private citizens, and that is what provided us with the information and the history that we can see now based on that and that investment at that time. So taking that example and using it today, groups of people investing in local artists and our current artists, it's similar to what was done initially,
Yeah.
many years ago.
And you reminded me of something that the late Dr. Runoko Rashidi would say to us all the time, talking about museums. That art must have some value for Europeans to go into Africa and take that artwork out and put it in their museums. And those are the very same artifacts that the folks who are investing in art are investing in. So again, we have an opportunity to benefit from that investment, but Europeans value our art greatly. I want to shift the conversation now to something that happened within the past week. Last Sunday, this hip hop artist by the name of Kendrick Lamar performed a halftime show, and there were a lot of people who saw the show and were extremely excited about it and were effusive in their praise for Kendrick Lamar and what he did. And then there were a number of people who just really did not get it. And it's interesting to me that the folks who didn't get it in some ways are kind of in their feelings about it because they felt that something was wrong, because this show, from their perspective, was not entertaining. There were complaints that the sound was bad and they couldn't hear what he was saying. There were complaints that they couldn't understand what he was saying because he was talking too fast. All kinds of complaints. Some people called it trash. I watched a video of some news commentator that just said it was the worst Super Bowl halftime show of all time. And in the same thread, somebody showed New Kids on the Block on stage. And I think when they did that halftime show, they probably got the same label, worst halftime show of all time. But the thing that they had in common was that, well, I'm not going to say New Kids on the Block was hip hop. It could have been their attempt to mimic hip hop, but I'm not going to call New Kids on the Block hip hop. But the point is that it was really negative. And from my perspective, it just seemed that there was some hateration going on. Elijah, you've been involved in musical productions and touring and so forth and so on. And I'm sure you had an opportunity to see that performance. What are your thoughts about what you saw on the field that day?
It was interesting. One of the things that I like about Kendrick is that, unlike a lot of rappers, he actually tries to put positive messages in his music. It's just not all about the streets. So I just want to start by saying I salute him for that. I think his approach was more of being an artist than it was become entertained. And when people think about the Super Bowl halftime show, you want to be entertained, but I think Kendrick had other plans, and his plans were to use one of the biggest stages to put some messages out to the world, and I don't think a lot of people were happy with that. There were some issues with his mic in the beginning. Some people felt that it was sabotaged. He does talk kind of fast, and if you're not a fan, it might be challenging to understand him. For those who want to understand him better, you can just look up his show with the
captions.
With the captions. Yeah, there you go. But I would say on the entertainment side, when we want to talk about showmanship or stage presence, as a rapper, I'll give him a B. I've seen rappers with more energy like Wu-Tang, Busta Rhymes, MC Hammer. So his energy or stage presence probably, there's room to develop that. But his overall show, I thought was pretty cool. You could tell he put time into it. He really, to every detail of the show. So that's why I give him a B. And again, I think he was trying to be more of an artist than he was trying to come entertain. But he did have a great production where he had dancers on stage. So there's that part too. Some of the messages that people said that he had in the show was like Samuel Jackson and the Squid Game comparisons and the red, white, and blue. The flag. He had a lot of symbolism in his show. And I think, again, people, when they come to a halftime show, they don't want to think. We just want to be entertained. So I think that played a role in all the criticism that he received.
Yeah. I want to come to his defense a little bit about his showmanship, because unlike some concerts, he was actually on a field and he had to navigate through all of that choreography, and he had to have control of his breath and all of that. So there are some who looked at his performance and they actually graded him highly on the way he was able to deliver that in spite of the physical challenges of what he did. But it just goes to prove the point that there's so much more to this than we actually realize. It was a visual experience. I mean, if you look at the way all those people on stage had to be in certain places at certain times in order to give context to the story, the whole game aspect of it, the fact that it was a video game and you had a controller and you had all this movement associated with the messages that were being delivered. It was just, to me, it was just amazing. And I'll be honest with you, I'm not a person that's even motivated to watch the Super Bowl or the halftime show. I have some thoughts about that I will share as we get into this conversation. But I just wanted to give the brother props because I do a little bit of rap, and 5 or 6 minutes is enough for me. And that's standing on stage with a microphone in my hand and little 1-2 movements. This brother covered a lot of ground, so I gotta give him his props on that. Simi, you're the other musician in this conversation. What are your thoughts about what you saw and what you heard?
Well, as a musician, the performance itself takes me back to my marching band days. And what we're able to produce now is so much more. It lifts it to fifth, sixth, and even a seventh dimension when you can do what they did in that performance. For me, the symbolism means something different than maybe to one of my friends that's 20 years younger than I am. Everything for me in the total experience as a consumer, everything was behind the scenes that we don't know about. If you recall, it was Michael Jackson that really brought, MTV to the forefront, and because of his notoriety, was able to grasp the reins of production and to really force the hand of the funding bodies and the whole production crew. He was behind all of that. Now you look at, we come all this way up to Kendrick, his whole crew are people of color. I say black and brown people. The dancers, the participants, the singers, even those on the sidelines had more than one role. They weren't just crip walking like Sister Serena, but they were also bringing who they were. They were bringing who they were in this world and what they bring as an artist or someone at the top of their craft. Because we always allow folks to put us in a box for our entertainment. You're just a singer. You're just a trombone player. You're just a dancer. Why don't you just do that? And there's no way you can do that when you're an artist, because an artist is not what you do. An artist is who you are. And so he brought all of who he is into that. And each of the people that he chose were strategic, if we recognize it or not. They're still analyzing some of it, as a matter of fact. But each person brought their representation of what the public might have thought that they were, and then brought in what it was that they were doing on this project. And then when we look at it, we have to look at it from an Afrofuturism concept, because we are making that statement by having the producers black and brown, the dancers black and brown, the music black and brown, the words black and brown, the use of the field in a new way, rather than marching out the folks that you choose for their athletic ability only for entertainment. Because we very rarely talk about athletic ability for what it truly is, for the great thing that it is that a man or a woman can run that long or execute those things. We've thingified our entertainment, as we have thingified everything else. And as Martin Luther King will tell you, once you thingify a thing, it's very difficult for people to see your humanity. And I believe that production brought out the humanity of Black and brown people, male and female, and put it on the field that's usually used to work the mule, so to speak, just to work the team that they put there and get that job done. So
Yeah.
it was an excellent opportunity to go beyond that without having to say a word. And then, of course, everything behind the scenes just reiterated that because he had the power to dictate the way it was going to go, and he had the power to bring on who he wanted to be there. It was no different than when Michael Jackson had them hold the beginning of his performance for so many minutes to get everybody all stirred up. And he knew he had that power, but had he just stayed in his box, he never would have been able to push out beyond that and make his performance be something they're still talking about many years past his death. So we have to remember that when we do things like this and when we participate and support, hopefully, support things like this, we are saying that Black people do exist and shall exist in the future.
Bonnie, you had a chance to see it.
Pardon?
I said you had a chance to see the performance. What are your thoughts?
Well, actually, the only reason I do watch the Super Bowl is for halftime. And I didn't watch it this time, so I missed it. But then I caught up later. I kind of appreciate what Elijah was saying about the, like people do go to look to be entertained, et cetera, et cetera. And one of the things that was said was that he said that this was the right time, but you got the wrong man. And so he purposefully was making a statement, and it was a change in the Super Bowl. And I appreciate that. And, like I didn't understand it at first. I had to like do a lot of research because I don't play video games, and and he does talk really fast. I couldn't understand what he was saying. My grandkids can, but I was able to learn a lot afterwards and see the complexity of what he was saying. And I think this is actually going to create a whole deviation in the way the purpose of the Super Bowl, because it was initially to entertain. I mean, there have been some great entertainments, over the years, and I totally appreciated them. And I also appreciated this particular performance and the difference that it brought to the public and a greater understanding in areas that I am not that, I don't listen to a lot of rap music. I listen to some of it. And I also don't understand a lot of it. I don't understand a lot of the games. I didn't understand some of the meaning. So it was really great to listen to the conversations that were created based on, the questions and trying to get a better understanding of why, what things were being done and the significance behind them. So that was, it was all good. It was different, and it was definitely different than the past. And that's a good thing.
Yes, yes. I
I
just
think
want to
Bonnie,
remind the listeners that you're listening to 360 Info Network right here on AM 1490 WERE. We are also simulcasting live on YouTube and Facebook, so you can go to my YouTube channel, you can go to my Facebook page, you can also visit the Journey with Hamtonio to see my broadcast partners' YouTube channel, and you can view programs on that platform as well. I'm having a conversation with Mr. Rodney Carpenter, Miss Bonnie Venable, Elijah Gilmore, and Simi Davis. They are all artists. Rodney and Bonnie are visual artists. Simi is a recording person. She's a musician, singer, and all that good stuff. And Elijah G is a superstar. Somebody who's been on the planet for a minute doing what he does with the drums, other percussion. I remember seeing a performance that he did with Hugh People Vocal Ensemble at the Music Box last year. And I don't think you were playing a trap set that night. I think you were playing hand drums and other percussion, but it was just a magnificent performance. And it's amazing what we can do when we are so talented and have been plugged in. We're talking about the Super Bowl halftime show, and Elijah and Bonnie and Simi gave their opinions on it. I don't want to leave Rodney out. So, Rodney, is there anything you'd like to share about what you witnessed in that performance?
I think Simi touched on a bunch of things. The fact that he showed that we got a voice, and we got to recognize that we got power. I was listening to a podcast by Roland Martin yesterday that talked about how the halftime show became such a big thing. And I never heard this before, but in Living Color did a halftime show 50 years ago or whatever, and everybody didn't watch the Super Bowl. They watched them at halftime. So they understand the value of entertainment. So they took and started pushing entertainment. So and they pushed us, like Simi was saying, into just doing entertainment. But they showed that the power of us as Black people and marketing. So we need to learn that's making a whole lot of other people a lot of revenue. So that's making a whole lot of people. He was like, we don't realize that our voice is important, but our power, and we need to get together and really start using our power to promote our own revenue and stuff in our communities, So everybody's getting rich off of us. So they took an idea from a Black show and promoted it for all these years, and they showed them how to make money. Never gave them a dime,
Right.
know.
Elijah, go ahead.
Yeah, I think Kendrick, as a young man who's really exploring himself in the whole world, like Simi was saying, that one thing. We got to connect to everybody, not just us. So it's how do we fit in and how do we make our power felt? So that's really a big thing we have to work on,
Yeah, well, it was a really huge statement. I mean, the fact that you have the president of the United States in the building and you're making a statement about how America treats Black people, an emphatic point about how America treats Black people. I mean, what bigger a stage to confront authority on? You've got millions of people around the world that are seeing this. And Elijah, you mentioned the fact that people wanted to be entertained rather than being informed. I have some thoughts about that whole paradigm and harvesting energy and so forth and so on. And I want to get into that. But I know that there was a point that you wanted to make in response to something Simi said. So do you remember what you wanted to share?
Yeah, it actually what Bonnie had made a point about. By the way, Simi, I thought I loved how you did the breakdown about, artist is not what you do, but it's who you are. I thought that, and I just loved the whole response about the halftime show. But I really wanted to respond to what Bonnie said about a lot of people didn't understand Kendrick's artistic messages. And what do you think, Brother Vince or anybody, what do y'all think the messages he was trying to push? Was it one message? Was it many messages? Because a lot of people were kind of lost when it comes to that.
There was so much to unpack, so many layers. It wasn't just one message. It was several messages. And I think really, with all due respect, the folks who didn't get it, I think they should take the time to do what Bonnie did and do some research. Because there are a lot of people who are on YouTube that have explained what they got out of it. And a lot of what they shared about what was said and what was shown was exactly on point. So just because you didn't get it the first time around, sometimes you have to listen to a song over and over and over again before it reverberates in you, before you really understand what was said. And, you got people around the world that buy and listen to hip hop music. And believe it or not, most of the customers that purchase hip hop music are not us.
Right.
And they're listening to these songs and they're memorizing the words, and they were singing along with Kendrick Lamar when that performance was in progress. So it wasn't that folks aren't aware. It wasn't that it didn't have any meaning. It had a profound meaning, but it's to those who are plugged in. So I don't know. The other thing that I wanted to say, and I'm going to yield to Simi in a moment, is that sometimes we need to be informed rather than being entertained. We spend so much time being entertained that sometimes we miss out on information that could be beneficial to us. How many of us scroll on Facebook all day? And there are other platforms that are giving you useful information, but we on Facebook watching fights and watching people pop balloons because they don't like the person that's presenting themselves. We watch a whole bunch of ridiculous stuff. And I get it. We live in a stressful world, and sometimes we want to escape from the reality of reality. But sometimes we have to be exposed to the reality of reality so that we can do things to make our reality a better reality. And part of that is being informed. We can dwell in ignorance and the bliss of ignorance, or we can tackle things on and make changes, because life is constant change, and so much about our reality needs to change. You look at the way we're affected by the economy. You looked at how folks are dealing with this runaway inflation that we've been trapped in since the 1970s. We have to know what's going on in order to do the things that we need to do in order to create a reality that suits us and not be sucked into the matrix and have to be in a perpetual state of victimhood. Me?
I want to go back to what Bonnie was saying in the previous conversation about museums and tie it back into this. When we look at what we see in the Louvre, what we see in the British Museum, we look at even here, in our great Museum of Arts in Cleveland, we are not seeing a fair representation of the artist, nor do we get the story until there is like a traveling exhibition. I remember when I turned a significant number for my birthday, I was asked what I wanted to do, and I said, I want to go see the Picasso exhibit that was here at the time. Because, I've been collecting I was telling Vince, I can't believe it, but it has been 50 years. So I wanted to see what they had with Picasso. And it wasn't so much the work that was there, it was the story behind the blue period, or behind his different, the Cubist period, the things that he did that told you who he was as an artist and how he brought that in. And then, of course, there was the rest of his life, even in his romantic life, et cetera, et cetera. We don't get that when we go to the museum. We see whatever they decide to pull out of the basement. And I mean, literally, there are basements in these museums full of African art, and having some African art that was produced here in the States, African American art, that never sees the light of day. Only the curator will see it. And they just started a curation program for curators, teaching people how to be curators. And it doesn't have a representative sample of folks that look like us that are in it. So again, you have somebody else telling the story, the history, even the personality of the art. So what made people so mad on some levels is that Kendrick was not allowing that. He showed up as his whole self, and he expressed some of the things that he believed, not by himself singing a particular song, but by who was on the field with him at the different times and what they were doing. So, the visual artist of me really enjoyed that, because I can think back on something and have a different experience thinking about Samuel Jackson depicting Uncle Sam and what is the significance for us, because I remember the different iterations of Uncle Sam in this country and how it was used to manipulate, not to entertain, but to manipulate. And so Kendrick took what he could to articulate some very deep and polarizing concepts, and also include them in a performance. And that's probably why some people were upset, because it was deeper than they really wanted to go. Like Elijah said, they just wanted us to go and, just dance, just do your thing, just dribble. And they don't want to hear the rest of it. And so Kendrick took his moment for whatever it was worth. He took his moment and he poured all of that into that moment. And there's no unseeing that. You can be mad at it, or you can be perplexed by it, or it can spur you to study more. But what you can't do is unsee it. So that's what I really liked,
Yeah.
how he brought that through as an artist.
I think he combined. I think he combined entertainment and information. And if it wasn't that piece of entertainment, that was like the sweet thing that kind of drew people in. So there's a lot of value in entertainment. And also it's a good way to, get the kid to eat the vegetables, like add some apples to it, Yeah, so it's, they work together.
Yeah.
They work
Oh
together.
yeah. Is it okay, Vince, if I say
Go
something?
ahead. Yeah.
Simi brought this up about Michael Jackson changing the landscape for Black artists being presented on platforms such as MTV at the time, and we know that Black music has had a huge impact on our world. Specifically, hip hop is one of the top styles of influence out of the different styles of music that's heard all across the world. And one thing that some musicians who are aware of how they can use music as a tool and have the capacity to do it, because you can know it but still may not have the ability or the courage to do it. But when you think about artists such as Michael Jackson, he had songs such as "We Are the World," "I'm Looking at the Man in the Mirror," "Doesn't Matter If You're Black or White," "Heal the World, Make It a Better Place for You and Me and the Entire Human Race," and other people such as Nina Simone and Bob Marley, and even people like the Beatles. They took their music and used it as a tool to try to help push our human family forward. So for those musicians who are aware and have the I guess the courage and capacity to do it, I think it's a beautiful thing, because it can help. Every little bit can help us move forward, and musicians definitely can help. And they don't necessarily have to be red or blue, but they can put the right messages out there. As we said earlier, Vince, music is being used in education, because usually people learn quicker when you apply it to the arts, and they usually retain it longer as well.
Yes. So I also wanted to talk about the idea of entertainment, because I'm just trying to understand how you could not be entertained just by the spectacle of what we saw. I mean, whether you liked it or not, there was entertainment value to the show. The fact that it had that extra dimension of depth, message, meaning, that made it even better. I really struggled to understand how folks could say that it wasn't entertaining. And then you look at the idea of this all Black show in a time that there's so much pushback on DE and I. And you had all those brothers and sisters on stage at one time. You look at the symbolism, Kendrick Lamar in the middle of red and blue. He showed you how divided this country is. There was a point where they were laying on the ground, they were laying on the stage as if there were chalk outlines around them. There are just so many things. The role that Samuel Jackson played in that, he represented America. There was a point in the performance where, it was like Uncle Sam was like, wait a minute, hold up. You're too loud. You're too aggressive. This is one of his words, but he was saying, you're too aggressive. We don't like that. And so then he came out, brought SZA out, They did a nice little lovey-dovey type song and calm things down. And Uncle Sam says, yeah, that's what we like, calm or whatever. And that's when they went into teasing Not Like Us and doing the song anyway. So many people thought that this halftime performance was about his beef with Drake. It was way more than that.
So
There's
much more.
metaphor involved in this. There's simile involved in this. There was the whole legal situation because his performance provoked a lawsuit to be filed by Drake. And there was also another lawsuit that had already been filed. So this is a battle that's taking place in the courts. So again, it's a game. The whole law piece, it's a game. When people walk into a court of law and they have a representative, the representative is an agent of the legal system. It's about working out deals. That's what it's about. It's all about deal making. The courts
Oh, it's
are
not all about deal making.
it's all about deal making. So once again, this brother is exposing what's going on in the world right now. And it's right there in plain sight. But that's the nature of esoteric knowledge. If you pull out a dollar bill and you look at it, you'll see a whole bunch of stuff on it that you don't understand.
Hey, Vince,
Go
I
ahead.
think a important statement from this conversation we had that I think we could share on this message is, if you get the stage, don't be afraid to be yourself. That's what Kendrick did. He really showed the people who he was. He didn't just try to entertain. So I think Eli was jumping on it. So all of us, if we get the opportunity, we should take advantage of being our real self and sharing who we are to help other people understand who we are and help everybody relate to each other as one race, the human race, you know?
Mm-hmm. We're getting comments from folks who are watching the program, and I would encourage you, if you have thoughts that you want to share with us, go ahead and type them in the chat. You can chat with us on Facebook. You can chat with us on YouTube. We're really interested in what you have to say. And I was really hopeful that we could have some young folk on this program. You know, those of us who are on the show, many of us, with the exception of Elijah, have been around for a minute. We lived through the 60s and the 70s, and you know, our elders were saying the same thing about us. We can't understand that music. They weren't necessarily feeling the way we dance. You know, it was a completely different world. So I relate, Bonnie. I mean, I'm going to admit that I haven't really listened to Kendrick Lamar extensively. You know, I've been compelled to listen to the song "Not Like Us" because you know I just want to know what they're talking about. Or there's another song called "We Gonna Be All Right." We gonna be all right. I listened to that song the other day, and I'm like, wow, this brother is really in people's faces. And yeah, you know, there's a little profanity, and he might drop the N word, you know, a few times, but there's intentionality about it. And you cannot negate the fact that there is an artistic aspect to what he's doing, whether you like it or not. So, you know, I told somebody the other day, you know, what he did basically was he just told the president, kiss my behind, because we're going to do what we got to do, and everybody is going to know. So it's just amazing. I'm speechless when I think about it. And again, not one to watch the Super Bowl, not one to watch the halftime show, but this is definitely one that will be remembered for a long time. And it cannot be overstated how important it was to make that statement. Like somebody said, right place, wrong person. You know, now there is some controversy about who the wrong person was,
Right.
because some people could have said that the wrong person was the president. And then there were some who were saying that he was the wrong person because he was going to tell the truth. And then there's the whole idea of the revolution will not be televised. Some folks are around long enough to know who Gil Scott Heron is and to know about the song that he put into prominence on a world stage. But what I want folks to understand about this idea that the revolution will not be televised is he was not talking about TV cameras and them capturing people out in the streets, turning over cars and throwing Molotov cocktails and all that kind of stuff. That's not what he was talking about. Gil Scott Heron, in his own words, was talking about a revolution that takes place in the mind. That's where the revolution has to happen, that the change has to occur in our thoughts. What Kendrick Lamar did, from my perspective, is that he elevated that idea to a new level because he televised the revolution. The revolution was on television on February, whatever last Sunday was. The revolution was televised, and it had an opportunity to affect so many different people in profound ways. So I don't know. I think we should take the time to maybe look at it a few more times. Like I was saying, you listen to a song over and over again, it will finally make sense to you. And I think that performance will. And then there are also other recordings of that performance. So if you saw it last Sunday and the sound wasn't right, you can go to YouTube and you can see the performance and you can blast it through your home theater system and you can hear it in all its magnificence. There are also apps that you might be able to slow it down. I know on YouTube, if you control the speed of the video, you can slow it down. I don't know if the closed captions work on that. But the other thought that I had was that you could also look up the lyrics. Anyone who's really interested in what was being said, just look at the lyrics. You know, it's like reading a poem. Somebody can recite the poem to you and it will come out and you heard it and you move forward. But on the other hand, you could pick up a book and read that poem and really let the words marinate in your mind and do what you can to try to interpret them in a way that makes sense to you. So we all have the ability to do that.
Just as a side note, Vince,
Yes.
some of the lyrics were changed for that halftime show. So if you do look up the lyrics, realize that everything may not match up to when he performed it for the halftime. It's a little side note.
Yes. And yeah, I mean, sometimes we have to sanitize what we do. But, I'm thinking about back in the day, Simi, you may remember this. There was a song by the Isley Brothers called Fight the Power. And there's a lyric in the song where they say bull and then there's a beat. And that was about as graphic as we would get back in the day. But now you can turn on the radio, listen to a song that's supposedly sanitized, but there's no confusion in your mind about what word was said. They just softened it a little bit so it wasn't as hard. But you hear it, you know what it was. That's the world that we're living in today. So we've come a long way. I like this comment, the fact that Kendrick won a Pulitzer.
3.
Very, very significant. We're going to continue our conversation for a few minutes after this broadcast ends. So I just want to remind everyone that you're listening to 360 Info Network on AM 1490 WERE. Our thanks to our engineer, Tone Harley, for making this possible. And to those of you who are listening on radio, know yourself, love yourself, be yourself, make it a great day. Peace. All right, we are on YouTube and Facebook. Those of you who are watching us on YouTube, if you haven't subscribed, subscribe. Doesn't cost you anything. It helps us a lot, tremendously. It helps us when you like, comment, and subscribe. You'll get notifications of our broadcasts and you'll be able to see them after the fact. So we'll just send you a little reminder that this happened. And again, you can watch the show. We bring on a lot of substantive guests. We're not just on here talking, giving our opinions. We bring in subject matter experts and they provide vital information about various topics. Mostly we deal with culture, we deal with art, we deal with current events, we deal with the continent of Africa. Our brother Antonio right now, that's where he is. He's on the other side of the world in a very warm place. It's near and dear to me, and I hope to be following his stead and going over there myself sometime in the very near future. But that's what's going on. So, any final thoughts, Bonnie, about what you saw and why we should be concerned or even involved in conversations about Kendrick Lamar?
Well, it was clearly a contemporary performance, and it's very relevant to the times. It was well done. It has a lot of meaning, and I think it's another example of how art, this was performing art, but art in general can really have a financial impact and value in the culture overall. So, I mean, I read someplace that that video of that performance was viewed more than Michael Jackson's. That was the only one that has exceeded in the number of views more than Michael Jackson's. And so, there it's clearly art, performance, music, visual art is a very, very important part of the economy of our history, and it's a way that we can make a difference in the conversation. I mean, there's a major shift in the conversation. This time last month, we were not talking about any of these things. This was not on a topic of discussion. And so it had a tremendous impact overall, and including financial.
Yeah, definitely provocative, Elijah.
I like what you said about and also what Simi said about just being yourself, and being true to yourself as an artist. You know, many times we as artists, we want to try to see how many people that we can get to become a fan or follower, and that's cool. I get it. However, we have to remember we're the first listeners to the music that we produce. And if you're able to get 25 or 50,000 more followers, but at the end of the day, you're not happy with the art that you presented, then I feel that you failed as an artist. And if you lose, fans or followers, but you're happy with what you presented as an artist, then I feel that that's a good place to be. That's what being an artist truly is being yourself.
Yeah. You said something really important, Elijah, and it just brings me into thoughts about audiences. Some of us have worldwide audiences like Kendrick Lamar. Some of us might only have an audience of 40 or 50 people who really feel what we do and show up for us time and time again. But the important thing to get to what you just said and what Simi said is the importance of being your authentic self as an artist. Sometimes it's not so important that you sell a million copies of something. Sometimes you might sell 20 or 50 CDs, but whoever received that got the benefit of the art that comes through you. And there may be something in that that affects them on a very personal level. We have so many amazing singers in this town. I'm thinking about people like Stacy Richardson and Donnie Lene and Von James and in the elder community, Evelyn Wright, and then
Yeah.
we've got Vanessa Rubin here. I mean, Vanessa she is a genuine Cleveland treasure, someone who lived in New York, was on Columbia Records. She's performing with some of the greatest folks to ever perform jazz in history. And she lives right here in Cleveland. So there are so many amazing people here. And sadly, Cleveland doesn't get enough of Vanessa just because of the issues that we run in terms of the economies of scale. It would be an insult to ask Vanessa to come do a concert for $100, when she's doing shows and she's getting paid $10,000 to do a show or $5,000 to do a show. But that's one of the realities that we face in this city. On the other hand, you have folks who might do that $10 show or that $20 show, and it needs to be $100 show. I mean, these very same people are capable of touring with those national acts and commanding those types of salaries or that type of payment for their services. So there's a lot of growing that we need to do. I'm going to put this out there just so folks know that musicians in Cleveland are having conversations right now. And it's important for us to have these conversations about things that we can do to change the landscape that we're dealing with. So while we talk about putting all of our musician colleagues on the same page and looking at some best practices and things that we can do to enhance our functioning as musicians in this town, there are also conversations that are taking place with venue owners. There is a Senate Bill 316, that has been proposed by Kent Smith. And what it calls for is rebates on the taxes on alcohol. So alcohol sales are made by venue owners. They may be able to get rebates on that. And then that money can be shared with musicians, because you can create a general fund within your venue so that you can support artists and pay them what they're worth. I had a really interesting conversation with Elijah yesterday, and he was telling me about some of the situations he's been involved in and what pay looks like in this realm, and then going to another realm and seeing a great decrease in the amount of compensation for a gig. And it's not fair to us to have to accept less when so many others are accepting more. Another issue that we're faced with is the fact that you have organizations that support musicians, but they don't support all musicians. So you have a musicians union in this town, and there are some who are able to be a part of this union, and they get the benefits of collective bargaining agreements and all the things that come along with having union representation. But the vast majority of us don't have that. So we don't get a guaranteed minimum when we come to do a gig. There are situations involving this National Independent Venue Owners Association that has resulted in a survey that has been done. And what they have found is that the average pay for a musician living in Cleveland is somewhere in the vicinity of $380 a gig. When I heard that figure, I was blown away, because I can't really count too many performances that have happened in my world as a musician where the pay was that high, which is not to say that I haven't been paid more than 386 or 384 for a performance, but for the most part, we're accepting far less than that. And the reason that there's so much disparity between what we get and someone who's getting that 300 or more is the fact that you have musicians that perform with the Cleveland Orchestra, they get paid. And then you may have even musicians in the Cleveland Jazz Orchestra who get paid more than someone who's performing on a Sunday night at your local pub. I'm not going to mention any names, but you know what I'm saying. So there's this disparity, but it's because of the elitism that exists within music. If you go to the Cleveland Orchestra, you ain't gonna see too many of us on stage. And the folks who are on that stage, they went to high school, they went to college, they got a master's degree, they've got credentials, and that's why they have that spot. And they spent so much to get to that position. Do you think that they're going to walk away from that job? No, they're going to hold that seat as long as they can. So they get in and they're 30, and then they retire in that position. And the whole time that they've been holding that seat, somebody else has not been able to participate in that orchestra. So they get locked in and they get these protections and they earn the pay, and we don't. So there are so many things that need to change about that. And, we could look at that in terms of the art world too. I think Simi mentioned earlier about the Cleveland Museum of Art and what's there. How many times Have you gone into the Cleveland Museum of Art, the Cleveland Museum of Art, and seen work by a Cleveland artist?
Well, brother Vince, I think that you're bringing up some really good points, and I'm glad that the conversations are being had to come up with some realistic solutions. You and I already know that I had limited time today for the show, but I'm so glad that you invited me on. It's so good to see you, Simi. Nice to meet you, brother Rodney and sister Bonnie. And yeah, I think we should continue this discussion because that's the only way that we're going to get real change. And everything's going up right now. You know, gas is up, food is up. So I believe the artist needs to make the adjustments as well. But yeah, thank you for having me on. And I'm just glad that these discussions are being had.
Yes. And I will add to that, Elijah, that I definitely see you as part of the solution, just based on your understanding of the power of music and the things that you're doing to amplify that. You are going to be a part of the conversations that we have in terms of leveling the playing field and being organized as musicians in this town. Just know that you'll have a critical and crucial role in that. And we can push forward the idea of creating solutions. So thank you for joining us on 360 Info Network today.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Simi, anything you want to add to the conversation about organizing musicians?
Just closing out on the same theme of what's in the basements of our museums. We've lost so many treasures in this town because somebody that we don't know is owning the property of all the songs written, all the poems written, all of the arrangements done, because a lot of our arrangements are done on the spot at a rehearsal or in the middle of a performance, and there's no way to capture that. Um, it doesn't take away from the value of the work that's in that basement just because it's in the basement. It's actually being kept set apart so that somebody else can benefit from it. And so, what we need to start doing, first of all, is the inside work. We need to take accountability as artists for accepting $25 for a $380 gig. We have to take responsibility for not having contracts. When we have these conversations, they're a conversation on the way somewhere else or to that gig and not ending with paper being signed. Because as you know, this is a country that lives and dies by the sword, and the sword is often the pen. The pen is mightier than the sword. So we've got to take more responsibility in our role as artists. And finally, my hope and my prayer is that in my lifetime, I'm able to see that all of us and the ones coming up under us will do a piece of what Kendrick, Michael Jackson, and any other prolific performer has ever done that we're still talking about. And that is, if we leave a little bit, Eminem said, you got one chance, don't blow it. When we get an opportunity, no matter how small, no matter how local, we should leave a bit of ourselves on that stage. And that's all I had to say on it right now. I know there'll be many other conversations. And Vince, keep me in mind if you want to have, more curated conversations. I'm certainly open to that. Okay. So thank you for having me on.
All right.
Good to see everybody.
All right. Rodney, any final words you want to give us?
I agree with Simi. If you get the opportunity to do something, do it, so make sure, don't pass up the opportunity to make stuff better for yourself and others,
Okay. Bonnie, you did give us your perspective. I just want to give you another opportunity if there's anything else you want to do to contribute to the conversation.
I really appreciated what Elijah said, that, the main thing is that you be true unto yourself. And no matter how big your audience or how small, as Simi said, make sure you leave some of yourself there. Make sure that you leave your stamp on what you're doing and how you are showing up in the world. And again, thank you, Vince, for including me in the conversation and the ongoing discussion about the value of art, whether it's music or visual art or curating art, like how we work together to make it a better world.
Okay. And with that said, I want y'all to know that we are looking at another opportunity to bring Rodney and Bonnie back to Larchmere Arts. So stay tuned. We got some things developing, and I mentioned Mary Weems. Mary Weems is going to be a part of this project as well. So stay tuned for that. Let me reiterate once again that I'll be at the East Cleveland Public Library today at 3 o'clock. So looks like the snow has stopped. We got a little bit of rain. Things have calmed down a little bit, so we won't get a blizzard between now and 3. If you are able to come to the library, please come on through. I got some music, I got some poetry, and I got some pictures to show y'all, and it's all in honor of Black History Month. Also, stay tuned. We are going to have photos, poems, and performances. Go ahead, Rodney.
Don't you got a link to that show too? I think I've seen, so you might want to tell them about that if they can't make it. Don't you have a link to your show at the East Cleveland Library? I thought I saw.
No, you may have seen a little 13-second clip that I did to promote it. It's not going to be televised.
Okay,
I am
okay.
going to
I
record
thought that was a link to the show.
Yeah, no link for that. You have to come to the library.
You got to come to the show. Okay, I was trying to help you out, but I got okay.
Yeah.
All right, take care now.
Yeah. I'm just saying, if you're not doing anything today, and there's so much going on today, trust me. I mean, while we were on the air, I was getting invited to something that's happening today. So I can't be in 3 places at the one time, but there's one place that I have to be at 3 o'clock, and it's going to be the East Cleveland Public Library.
So you're going to have some more poetry too, some new poetry.
Yes.
This afternoon.
New poetry this afternoon, and some of that poetry will probably be shared when we do the next poetry event at Larchmere Arts, which is going to bring Deanna Thompson. She's an up and coming photographer, and she's taken some magnificent photographs of poets. So my hope is that the poets who are photographed will show up, and they'll be able to do a performance for us, and we can get words and we can get pictures, and just have a good time and make Larchmere Arts the spoken word venue that it has been in the past. We're bringing it back. And I'm going to put this out there too. I'm sitting here looking at Simi. Simi and I have done performances as a duo a number of times historically, but we have not performed together. Wow, has it been like maybe 3 or 4 years, maybe longer?
Yeah, about that time, about that amount of time.
Yeah, so I'm gonna have to see if I can find a couple $1,000s to pay you to sing for an hour or two. She said, "Yeah, real quick." Yeah.
Hey, I'm not gonna turn down my 380.
Well, we'll charge $250 a person, and then that way, if we get 10 people to show up, I'll be able to give you that grand. We're gonna raise the bar in Cleveland if we can. We'll do everything.
It's certainly time. Yeah.
This has been a great conversation, and I do hope folks that will take the time to listen to what was said and do some homework. We're so used to being spoon-fed information, and a lot of times the information that we're spoon-fed is not in our best interest. But if you go after something, if you have a genuine interest in knowing the truth, it will come to you. I'm a firm believer in that. With all that said, thanks to you all for being with us today on 360 Info Network. To those of you who have been listening and viewing, don't forget, like, comment, and subscribe. And as always, know yourself, love yourself, be yourself. Make today your absolute best day. Peace.
Peace.